Congratulations on the 182 ETH sale, which was this piece. What was your response when you found out that a piece sold for 182 ETH?
I got a bunch of notifications and I was like, what? Something is happening. I was saying to my girlfriend, I think something is happening because I get a lot of messages. And I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll check later. And when I got home, it was actually hard to get to know what happened. And at some point, I understood, a sale happened on Anticyclone, and it's not a small amount. I was like, oh, fuck, that's a lot.
Hi, everyone. It's Sam, NFT Statistics, and today we have William Mapan on the podcast. William is a generative artist whose project Anticyclone was one of the most successful art blocks projects of 2022 and part of curated Season 7. The thing I love about talking to generative artists is that they have both very, very rich creative sides as well as a great quantitative background and ability to make their creative vision come to life. William has both in spades. Anticyclone is a beautiful collection named for the weather patterns that follow very aggressive storms. In this conversation, he walks us through the art, tells us what the challenges of the process were, which outputs surprised him, how he named the 24 different color palettes, and a whole lot more. We also go over his life in Paris, and we learn a bit about him as a teacher, as a father, and what he's spending time on now and plans to spend in the future. I really found him a great person to talk to. I enjoyed this conversation. I hope you do as well. Hi, everybody, and hi, William Mapan. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. It's like holiday time, so I try to not work too much at all, but it's high. It's difficult. I always end up doing something.
Yeah,
but yeah, I try to keep it low.
Yeah, staying away from work is never easy, especially when you enjoy what you do. So why don't we start? Why don't you tell us what was the goal with Anticyclone? What was the basic high level vision for what you wanted the art to be?
Basic message, I would say, is I wanted to have something like a piece that convey, some emotion I was having during the whole month. So I was having making this series, like, peacefulness, quietness, and steady motion and curves and stuff like that. And because I like a lot everything about skies and planetary phenomena, I wanted to study anticyclones. So that's the name of the series. And because they match perfectly this idea this state of mind I was in, I wanted to study them and make something with them. And yeah, they're such powerful when you see them from space. It's crazy how many they are and how detailed and how interesting and how amazing they are. Their effect on the planets is amazing. Like, they just push away the darkness, basically. They just push away everything that you don't like that I don't like, at least, like rain, darkness, cloud, very cloudy. Basically, winter, the winter state is not here when you have a good anticyclone. So I wanted to put with all this into one single piece. Well, 800 pieces, but one long form series.
And for those who are unfamiliar with anticyclones, what exactly are they?
Basically, it's like the antagonist of a hurricane, of a cyclone, which is very bad. But it is like a natural phenomena that is created with some kind of hair flux, hair movement, and they create some kind of motion, and they start to spin, they start to to clear an area out of clouds or rain, and everything shines where they are basically. And it's just natural phenomena on Earth.
What was your process when you went in to build this collection or to create the algorithm? Did you know in the beginning what you wanted it to look like, or how did it evolve over time?
I think at the very beginning, I was just trying to reproduce some photos I was taking. Like often I look up to the sky and I'm like, oh, that's a cool pattern. So I take a reference picture. And then later on, maybe months after, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna start coding some stuff, not really knowing where I'm going. And at some point, the output I see through a screen just reminds me something I saw earlier in the year, or maybe the month, or maybe the week. And that's kind of a process of saying something and letting the brain, assimilate it, and then at some point you're just going to do stuff automatically without any reference, but the reference are actually, in some dark spot in your brain, and you're just putting this on the canvas, and at some point when you realize, oh, I'm making this because I saw this before, you're like, oh, okay, my God. So you go back to that reference picture, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna dig this. And that's how I started to probably make Anticyclone, when I connected what I was trying to do, like studying curves and motion and stuff like that with shaders. And then I'm like, okay, I know why I'm trying to do this, because I saw that picture earlier, and then I got this picture out of my pocket, and then I started properly making the series.
One thing that occurs to me is that with generative art, you're creating an algorithm, and from that come all these different outputs, which is very different from a photograph where you have like one specific output. As a generative artist, how do you translate a photo into an algorithm which is going to have all sorts of different outputs, as opposed to being able to really put out exactly what it is that you're looking at and modeling after?
Being a generative artist, I won't talk for all generative artists, but at least me, it's a combination of different aspects of me. Like I like to paint, I like art basically, and I like making stuff, and I also enjoy coding and engineering. So I have this different and conflicting sometimes aspect of me. So when I see a picture, I'm going to try to reverse engineer it. Like, so a cloud is composed of this blobby shape, but this blobby shape maybe it's made of small circles, and maybe the small circles are maybe not too far apart from each other, and then you start building an algorithm like that from a single picture. And then because you start building an algorithm, you can start introducing some chaos and randomness to the algorithm. And that's how you end up having a bunch of outputs that you can't expect, because you think of one algorithm for a particular output, but you can't imagine all outputs with all the possible parameters. And then that's how we end up with a lot of surprise during the process.
Were there any pieces that like truly surprised you? I imagine it's a very nerve-wracking thing when you're watching them mint and just wondering if one of them might go wrong, or if there's something you hadn't thought of. What was that process like for you, seeing those mint outputs come out? And were there any that really just kind of shocked you or you didn't expect?
Yeah, I would say, like, first of all, it's a very stressing experience. Like the long form generative art format is very stressing, because you don't know what's going to be the output. So you're in the unknown as well, and everything can happen. So your job as the artist is to control more or less the algorithm and to have the less surprise possible. But at the end of the day, surprises happens whatever you try to to do, it will be always like that. So yeah, the minting process, I was like, oh my God. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I didn't expect that. And there is, I think, two outputs sometimes. Two outputs I wasn't expecting them at all. Like they don't have any space. They don't breathe that much, but because of the color contrast and etc., it gives an interesting composition. And when I saw them coming out, I was like, how is that possible? So I started to go back to my algorithm and see what happened, because I didn't fully understood. But yeah, that's interesting how those can happen. Yeah. And yeah, it was very interesting. And on top of that, I had like a small issue with the minting process, where the server rendering the thumbnail wasn't properly rendering like the live view. So I had this whole surprise as well to under live. So I had to dig back into the code and debug my shaders. And debugging shaders is the worst thing ever for a graphics programmer. But yeah, it was like stressful. That's a word, like stress.
Stressful, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Do you remember what numbers were the ones that surprised you? Okay, you mentioned that 361 was one of the Anticyclones. 361 was one of the ones that surprised you. What about I have it pulled up here. What about this piece was surprising to you?
Because like with Anticyclone, the whole thing is to let air travel the composition. So most of the time you'll see, some kind of motion of negative space going through the composition. But with this one, there is no blank at all. Like, why is that? But at the same time, it's beautiful. It's more planetary. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. That actually enabled me to do something else after that. But because of this, it's not a bug, but it's a surprise. And yeah, it's a beautiful surprise. And there's two of them like that. And I was like, I didn't anticipate this at all, but it's great. Like, I just love it a lot.
There are a handful where it's just one, where there actually isn't a grid, but you're talking about this one being different in the sense that it just feels like it's more crowded. Two things that kind of jump out at me about the piece. One is that there's this real natural flow to the way you talk about nature and what you're trying to create with it. But at the same time, you put on this quite rigid grid system, which is, rectangles, right angles, that overlays, which feels much more man-made, much less kind of natural flowing, like the way you described the piece. What was the thinking behind that?
When you draw a composition, I start by putting some marks and some grids, to have some kind of guides to know where I'm going to put my composition and the point of interest into my composition. So it was mainly a reminder of my practice of doing this, and also to structure the organic shapes that was coming with the flows. So because the flows are a lot of curves and rounds going around, I also wanted to have some kind of grids to cut and to break that flow, basically, and to have something much more readable for the eye. So yeah, that was the two main reasons I put the grids. And then I just started to play with them, and and then I think the first one was maybe the 3 or 4 or 5. It was maybe the 3 guide, 3x3. It was the first one I started to do, and then I expanded it to the other ones. But yeah, that was the idea.
The original idea you had was for them all to be 3x3, and then over time you're like, actually, why don't we turn this into something that has a lot more randomness to it?
Well, just because when you start making an algorithm, you define some rules that you know will evolve later, but because you have to focus on one thing at a time, you start by fixing some stuff. And I think the guide 3 was the first one I started to work with, and then I expanded it.
Got it. And the second question is, or something, I mean, the thing that I think really jumps out when you look at this work is the textures you create, both like, one is I guess the main one is just the paper textures. Is that something that's important to you? And what was your process for building that texture out into the paper?
I think generally speaking, like the materiality I have in my work, which is dragons or Anticyclone or other ones, is very connected to my own approach when making sketches or art. I always start on paper, and I think because of this connection I have with materiality, basically, I just try to have it and to import it into my digital work to make a connection. And that's way, and I think because it connects with me, I guess it can connect with other people, because no paper can travel across the screen. So for me, that's a way of communication as well. So it's not very made to just mimic something. It's just a way to communicate something or to convey an idea. And yeah, I just love like color pencil, the medium. So it's happening most of the time on paper. So and because I always, not always, but most of the time, I start by making something on a sketch on my iPad or something. I always sketch with these strokes, and I wanted, and because I like this kind of rendering, I wanted to have it like generative. But yeah, it was a challenge, but because you can't have any texture on art block, everything happened on the scripts on chain. So it was a challenge definitely for me to be able to do something like this, but I'm glad because it pushed me way beyond my limits. At first, I couldn't think at all I could make something like that. Like, I wouldn't believe if you told me 1 year ago I would do something like this, I would like, no, we can't do that, on the browser.
Would you say that building the texture was the most challenging part of this project for you?
It was challenging, but not the main, I think. I think the most challenging part for me was the color, the color compositions, because I'm really picky on my colors and the way they interact between them. I'm a huge fan of Joseph Albers and even Annie Albers. But with Joseph Albers, the thing that is very impressive to me is his study about colors and how they interact with them. And that's the first time it came to me like that colors interact between themselves and they are contextual. So a green won't be a green next, like a green is relative to another color. Like if you put a green with another green, then everything is gray because it's monochrome. So yeah, it's this kind of interaction that I just love, and I just love to explore. But it's really tough to find new ways to make something, because I didn't want it to just pick a palette or copy paste something from internet. Type cool palette on internet and pick from them. So I just wanted to explore myself. So on paper again, put your paint, put your color pencil out and start finding the colors by myself. And that was the most challenging part, I think. And yeah, I think like two colors are quite easy to find, to work between themselves. 3 started to become challenging. 4 start to be not manageable, and 5 is almost impossible for me. So it was very good challenge to have all these constraints and to make it work all together. I think for maybe half of the time project was about colors, me making colors and
definitely one of the coolest parts, I think, like exploring your project. This kind of brings up a couple things, but is looking at all these different names that represent the different color palettes. So here I have, which one is this right now? Sanita. And it's just so awesome how these different greens kind of interact differently on the lighter canvas versus the nighttime canvas. What was your, a couple questions. I mean, one, what was the thinking behind all the different names? And the second thing is, do you have any that you find like the most impressive, or the ones that your color palettes that you're the most proud of?
Yeah, the Sonia is amazing. The Sonia, and there's another, and the Bertha.
Okay. Yeah, so here's
because
Sonia.
those one are, there's a lot of colors, and it was a very intense challenge to make them work together and not to have them look the same every time I use the palette. So, because with every palette, every time I pick a palette with my algorithm, there's a small modification in color, like the saturation can move, the hue can move, but if you move too much, then everything falls apart because I made some very specific choices. So if I move a lot, everything breaks apart. So, and working with so many colors was very challenging. But
yeah, this Bertha one, it is wild. I mean, one, you have so many different colors, but two, the outputs do all like very successfully look very different and unique to themselves.
That was the idea, yeah. Because with one palette, I wanted to have different feeling, but does not mean. And that's the thing with colors. You don't need to change your palette to have different feelings. You can use the same palette to make something else. And with generative art, it can be complicated because it's generated and automated. Things can get quickly look, repetitive. So that was the challenge here, to not have repetitive palettes, even if it's the same one. Within the same filter, you have different outputs.
Yeah. And did you make them all equally likely? Like Sonia, which is your favorite, has, the most outputs of any of them. Was that not random?
That's definitely random. I don't expect that. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good random.
That's cool.
But and the names, because basically I wanted to make to say a small message to first. This is all names of women that inspire me and still inspire me as human, because they achieve so much in human history that it's amazing. And secondly, because hurricanes and tornadoes, usually they have women name for some reason, for complete bullshit and misogyny reasons. So I wanted to counterbalance this phenomena to say women are actually great and make the human shine. So yeah, that was the idea behind the names.
Awesome. Gotta ask, did your wife get one?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
So let's talk quickly. Congratulations on the 182 ETH sale, which was this piece. What what was your response when you found out that a piece sold for 182 ETH?
I got a bunch of notifications and I was like, what? Something is happening. I was saying to my girlfriend, I think something is happening because I get a lot of messages. And we're like, yeah, whatever, I'll check later. And when I got home, I'm like, oh my God, what all this, information, and something happened. It was actually hard to get to know what happened. And at some point, I understood, a sale happened on Anticyclone, and it's not a small amount. I was like, oh, fuck, that's a lot. So a lot of surprise. And when I saw the collector seed price, I was like, oh, that's a big honor to get in those kind of collection, because I imagine big collectors like to collect things they belong long term. They believe long term. So it was most like, for me, it was like a validator of what I did is, because I wanted to do something timeless. So if people start buying things to put them in collection long term, it means I succeeded a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I was blown away because I don't think I've ever seen this before. The prior top sale was 37 ETH, and then this one went for almost 5 times that. So it was such a up leveling, at least of the price. I mean, and we, who knows how important that is relative to other factors, but it was just such a huge step up versus the price that other people had paid so far.
It's interesting because this very first one, from the beginning was dragging a lot of attention. Like, this is a guide one by night, and even the palette, how it echo with the night time is amazing, very vibrant. And from the very beginning, this output made a lot of noise, and now even more. So it's an interesting path for this output. So
so going over that, the things that make this valuable are, 1, that it's a one guide, so there's no grid on it at all. 2, that it's a nighttime, which is only 14%. And then 3, that this Billy color palette, which also has a lot of different colors, but that it just happens to contrast so well against the black from the night.
Yeah, the night was very hard to make. And usually with generative art, I feel that with dark background, we have a lot of more work to do to make it work with colors, because you have to adjust everything to work with dark. And it's the same thing when you build a UI or website in dark mode. You have to change all the CSS basically. And it's the same with colors, because colors are contextual. They don't work on the same background, because the background is contextual as well, and gives a lot of impact on the colors. So I had to, so for every night palette, I had to adjust the palette and to make it work, and to maybe add less saturated, maybe more saturated, depending on the palette. It was very hard to work with.
So within the algorithm, you say if the background is night, then you have to adjust the colors in a certain way.
Yeah. So there is like one if this is night, okay, then make stuff. But I won't say, okay, this is night, then make this color like this color, and this color, this color. I'm more like, if this is night, maybe turn the wheel of color, the color wheel a bit on the left, so to match the dark background better, and maybe less saturated. So it's more about playing with the color wheel to see where it can fit the night. And the thing is that it has to work with all palettes, so it was tricky.
I'm sure. One thing that I always I think about when it comes to generative artists is the founders of CryptoPunks. When the punks were released, they had no idea that collectors would care how many traits an NFT had. So Seed Phrase is very famous because he has the only 7 trait CryptoPunk. Larva Labs had no idea that would be relevant, and it was only after collectors started to care that they added 0 trait, 1 trait, 7 trait into the website and the marketplace. Was there anything for you in either of your collections, either Dragons or Anticyclone, where just the way that collectors started talking about it was completely unexpected? or the way they value things was different from what you expected?
Yeah, definitely Anticyclone. The guide one, I didn't expect them to be so popular because for me at first, when I was working with the guide 3 and 4 and 5, I wanted to have discontinuities into the compositions. So the negative space is actually a strong aspect of Anticyclone and how to read an output. So I was very surprised how collectors reacted to the guide one. Were like, "Oh, this is the thing." I was like, "Okay, that's interesting because I didn't see like that." So it's very interesting, and this is why I love art. Everyone has their interpretation and their specific traits they love, and they rarely match the artist's traits.
Was there a piece of you? Was there a piece of you that's like, damn, you guys aren't understanding the meaning here? It's supposed to have these open spaces, and you're valuing something different, or were you just like, whatever floats your boat? I'm glad that people are interpreting it as they will.
I give my interpretation and how I build the series, but at the end of the day, art is personal, so it depends on how you react to something. So if people have a different interpretation than me, that means the output is deep enough for them to trigger something different.
And one of the wonderful things about generative art is A, you don't even know what your work is going to look like, and then B, you really have no idea how the audience is going to experience the work that you put out.
Yeah, definitely. I would say more broadly with abstract art, you never know what people will see. It's very interesting. It's like a psychological test when you see those splats of ink and the doctor asks, "What do you see?" and you start saying nonsense stuff. It's really the same thing with abstract art. It really depends on you, your experience, how you see things, on your vision. There's so many parameters on how we can interpret something. It's amazing with abstract art. And with figurative, when you paint like, I don't know, a hand, a hand is a hand, so there's no interpretation for this. This is a hand. So yeah, abstract art has this advantage of letting the imagination work.
And I think one of the things that occurs to me with your piece is, like, on the one hand, yes, like it is abstract, but on the other hand, you were so deliberate in what actually your vision was. Like, you had a very real, precise thing in nature that you were trying to make it. So it is kind of this interesting contrast between the fact that it is extremely abstract with the idea that you were pretty deliberate about what exactly, this anticyclone concept in weather, following a hurricane, calming the world, that you actually had in mind.
Yeah, it's very, when I do abstract art, it's very important for me to put my vision into it, because that's how I connect with it and how I make choices. And because with generative art, we have an infinity of outputs, and I think choosing is very tough with generative art. But it's less difficult if you have a clear vision and what you want to do. So then you can make a clear cut into your algorithm, and you can give a direction.
Changing gears a little bit, like, one thing that amazes me about generative artists is that the community is so talented, both as a computer programmer as well as an artist. And it's this kind of these two skill sets that are quite different from each other. I'm curious, what's your background? How did you come at this? Did you start with art? Did you start with computer science? Like, yeah, can you give a sense of kind of what got you here?
I think it was very random for me, because I started with a computer science degree that I hated. I hated it very much. And then I was like, I need something more graphics because I liked video games like a lot of teenagers, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna make video games. So I did this computer science degree. It was very not graphic. It was very into learning C, learning how to build whatever programs. It was very not graphic, and I felt something was missing. So I didn't even finish this degree. Well, yeah, I'm gonna quit halfway. I think I did 1 year and 3 months on two. Out of 2 years, I did 1 and 3 months, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna quit because I didn't have this graphic aspect. And then I did another thing, which was way more diversified. So I had a lot of graphics, so that checked the mark. Some computer science, some communication, some marketing, some art history, a lot of stuff actually. It wasn't deep into the knowledge, but the advantage was to have all these doors opened, and then you can choose where to go. And at first, I went with motion design and computer science, and my first job actually was motion designer. But little by little, I started to code all my stuff with JavaScript for my pipelines of motion design. I was like, maybe I should do that full time. So I stopped doing motion design, and I went into creative coding, and I got a job in there. And
when was this? When did you go into creative coding? What year?
I made a school called Goblin in Paris, and they kind of mix graphic design and coding to make some cool stuff, cool projects. And that was in 2012. 2012, and then when I got this degree, I went to London and I had my first job as a creative developer. So my job was to animate interfaces, make 3D stuff in real time in the browser. So that's where I started to develop my shaders knowledge. And then maybe 2 years after that, I started to do art again, to doodle a lot. And then that's how I have this, this balance where I love coding so much and didn't care about art at all. And then little by little, I started to love more art and to inverse the balance. At a point, I wanted to just make artwork with code. So I started doing this a lot. Maybe every day, I don't know, I didn't track it, but maybe, a lot of day a week. And I started like that. And then at some point, maybe 5 years ago, I would say, I started to go to museums and exhibitions, and that's how I stumbled onto, Vera Molnar and George Nees, all the pioneers of generative art. And I was like, oh, that's actually a thing. It's called generative art. And that's how I started to dig into this actual discipline. Because before that, I didn't know the term, and so I didn't know this was a thing for artists. And it was such a niche that it wasn't very known. So yeah, that's how I got there.
Who would you say most inspires your work? I have some of the work here of Vera Molnar up, but if you had to point to one or two people, who would you say you're most inspired by?
The thing with me that I'm not inspired a lot by generative artists, but more like painters. So I would say like C.Y. Wombly. I just love his work. Like, it's very inspiring for me. Bazzarelli as well. Who else? There's so many. Oh my God, there are so many. But mostly painters. And then with generative art, I would say the pioneers like the environmental journeys, Frieder Nage, if I say it well, Frieder Nage. All these people, all this generation that inspired me. And then later on, some people like Zach Lieberman, actually. Zach Lieberman inspires me a lot because of his practice and the way he shares and the way you see him evolve. It's very inspiring. Matt Delory as well is very inspired. He's a good friend, but a very big inspiration because we share the same taste, I would say. And it's very good to discuss with him every time about stuff and about art and about references and about history. It's very interesting. But
and what are you doing full time right now? Are you a full time artist, or do you have other jobs in your life?
Right now, I'm doing this full time. I quitted my job like 1 month before Anticyclone, I would say.
Cool.
So yeah, now it's mostly me doing stuff full time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
a couple questions. One is I love this. You put this thread out at the beginning of January that I just saw and retweeted it. But you point to your animation skills, motion, 3D design, so many different things. But it feels like in the current economy right now, the current economy of NFTs and art, there's so much more attention on generative art. So it makes sense that you landed there. Are there other skills, other mediums that you'd rather be working on, or that maybe rather is the wrong word, but that you really feel like you'd like to show to the world in a way that you have been able to with your generative art?
Yeah, definitely generative art has been like a rocket launch for me. And also, I think because of the spotlight generative art got for the past 2 years, it pushed me as well to push this way, like, what can I do? And I was seeing people doing stuff as well. So I was like, what is my voice in all that? Because so far it was a bit messy, a bit blurry for me. So it was a good opportunity for me to define myself as a generative artist. So that's why I pushed that way. But I think I'd like to go back to painting as well, because I just love painting. So I need to find a way at some point, maybe not next year or maybe the year after, to combine those two practices. So yeah, I love photography as well. I love so many things. I love too many things maybe, but that's what defines me. But yeah, 3D as well. Like, I don't know. There's so many things. Maybe painting. Maybe painting will be the second thing that I love most and I'd like to connect more with.
Makes sense. Yeah, it's worth it for listeners to. I've retweeted it. It's a thread that William made January 12th of last year, where he just goes over all the different mediums that he's built talent in and done work in, and it's really quite impressive. In prepping for this, I saw you also worked in advertising and marketing in a prior role. One thing I'm always interested in is there's so much generative art coming out. You know, Art Blocks has 3 different releases essentially every single day. I'm curious, what did you learn, or have you brought advertising, marketing? Obviously the art is incredible, but on top of that, you know, it takes more for artists to be successful in this space, and you have to be good self-promoters, good marketers, good advertisers, or at least, maybe even that's the wrong way of putting it, but at least your own unique style that collectors, you know, want to connect with. Have you had that for yourself? Like, what would you say is kind of what you've learned from advertising and marketing that you've brought to how you present your art business in NFTs to the collector world?
I would say that the good thing with working in this industry for me, it wasn't really the communication skills, because the communication skills was always the same for me on Twitter, and mostly on Twitter basically, to always share my work, what I'm doing right now, my whips. So it so even before NFTs, I was doing this on a regular basis, but with a much smaller crowd, mostly tech, and I was doing stuff, So on this side, I was always all right because it didn't change much for me to just share on Twitter my stuff. So I always been comfortable with this. But I think the experience of working in advertising for me was good on the production level because we work so much in this industry and at a rate that is very intense. So I know how to focus on something for many months. And I think that's one of my strengths is to forget everything I'm doing. If I need to finish something, I'm diving into this into this state of mind and just do it. And when you're done or almost done, you can start talking about it. And in a natural way, it's not in a marketing way, but just a human way, just communicate, just talk with people. And I've always been on the side of being more human on social networks. So you don't need to follow these 10 rules of, to explode your reach. I think it's just about being human and who you want to talk to. So I just want to talk to the broader audience, like my mother, for example. So I will always, use words that are not too complicated or very niche. Always try to communicate with a broader audience what I'm trying to communicate, what I'm trying to do and to say. So yeah, I think that's what marketing and advertising taught me in a way to just, talk with people. I've never really liked to say stuff to people because I was like a, developer and I wasn't on the marketing workforce where I need to call people and do campaign and stuff like that. I always hated it, but they have a point. You have to talk about what you do to just show it to the world.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a few conversations now with artists, and I think and all quite successful. And I think that the two commonalities that they have are, one is a willingness to share your work. So it's not about selling it. You don't have to be selling it. You don't have to be anything, but you have to be out there building kind of social media presence and sharing. And then the second piece is just being authentic to who you are. It's very, very hard for your whole life to try to be someone you're not. But to be very comfortable with who you are and authentic with that person, with the outside world, I think people really gravitate towards that.
Yeah, I think it's just easier that way. You don't have to simulate, some kind of strategy or whatever. It just be you the way you want to be. And I think it's fine because then it's way easier to talk on socials. You don't have to be someone else.
One question I'm kind of curious about, like I just pulled up the chart for the project has gone. And obviously, I don't think our artists should be too focused on the price of their work, but I'm curious through like the experience of having this piece out there, having your work out there, have you been surprised at like when the price went from 4 to 13 ETH quite quickly, or now it's been gradually rising? Are there things that have happened then, or are you just as surprised as everybody else by the way that the price moves of your work?
I'm always surprised, and actually, I don't even follow all those metrics. I'm very naive. I have a very naive approach. Like, I just wait, and when something happens, usually people tell me, and then that's how I check the metrics. But usually, I just focus on making new stuff. And not being so much looking back. So I don't like looking back that much, but sometimes it's good because you realize how much you did in the past. But usually I'm not like, I'm just gonna do my thing and just, make stuff. So I don't really look at all those metrics and charts. And so usually it's very good surprise for me to know, oh, there's a new price, or this piece sold for that. So yeah, very, very surprising every time. Every time it gets me.
That's awesome. Yeah. What about when you're out buying generative art? Like when you're looking at new, either as a collector or if you're looking at new projects that are coming online, what are you looking for? What do you think? When you're saying this is going to be a successful project or this might not be, are there things you have in mind, or is that quite a difficult task to figure out when looking at other art?
I'm looking for something that triggers an emotion and reaction for me. And usually every time I buy, I'm saying a lot to myself, like, what in which mood am I? Am I sad? Am I happy? And it will affect a lot what I'm collecting. So if I'm in a very quiet mood, I'm like, I need to chill, I'm just gonna buy something that is very quiet, very chill, like simple forms, simple colors, maybe something very subtle. And when I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like very, artwork, hard mode work, I'll be like, yeah, I'm gonna collect something very fantastic, very, not fantastic, not very like, how to say, splashy, big and with a lot of voice, a lot of,
What are some
noise.
pieces you're collecting right now? Or are there projects out there that have other art blocks projects or otherwise that have impressed you or that you've been collecting?
I collected some stuff on FX Hash lately. I was very in a state of mind where I wanted peace, and this just translated this to me. So I was like, it was an instant buy for me, and maybe it was like, I think 3 weeks later the release of the series. So I'm not collecting on the D-Day because I always miss it, but I'm going away like days after that, and I'm going through the collections, through the feed. I'm like, okay, this talks to me right now, so I'm gonna collect it right now. So that way, my collection is a collection of memories and a collection of states of minds for me at different moments in my life.
It is a beautiful and calm piece, and it also has that texture too, like the paper texture kind of it resembles some of your work as well.
Yeah, definitely. So it definitely talks to me. So I'm gonna buy 6. I think I bought 6, something like that.
Wow.
But it's usually the way I connect, and I love the way the work of Melissa W. I have this one. So when I collected this, I was in a very happy mood, like very festive, like a party mood. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna, so I like, as always, I came after the battle and I was just scrolling through the output on sale, and I saw that one, which was the perfect translation for my current mood. I was like, yeah, instant buy. So awesome. And because it's amazing, like the rendering is amazing, the message is amazing, the color are amazing. So we're like, yeah, I'm gonna collect, why not?
Yeah. One other question I forgot to ask about, based on your kind of professional career. I know that you've been a teacher before, and a teacher of coding and art, right? And what do you think is like the best way to get started? What is your advice for, if you were teaching people kind of like a quick course on how to get into generative art or kind of the NFT art world, what's the advice you give?
I'm still teaching at this very school where I went, Goblin. So I'm now teaching the new wave, let's say, of creative coders. But every time I think every year I tell them, take your time first. There is no rush. into anything. Like you can't rush something because I think the more time you let it cook, maybe you can say like, the more time you let it maturate into your mind, into your brain, into your body, the more you're gonna be okay and accustomed to it. So yeah, take your time for it. There's no rush. Like creative coding and generative art, I think will be there for the next century at least. So there's no rush. And secondly, know your basis before wanting to do amazing things. You have to take the basis seriously. And I think for this, the YouTube channel, the Coding Train on YouTube, is a very fantastic channel. I wish I had that when I started, but I had that kind of thing because Daniel Schiffman released a book called The Nature of Code back when I started, and that's how I started to learn how to do autonomous system and stuff like that. And I animated and very beautiful things, and with very basic concepts like trigonometry, all this stuff that is very, it's not, I won't say easy, but it's not the hardest thing to learn. So learn the basics and then you'll be able to do amazing things. You should take the time for it. This is basically the only two components for me.
I always like to end these with a few quick questions just to get your quick take. So for you, a few quick questions. One, ETH versus Tezos as an artist. What do you prefer and what are the big differences?
I don't really have any preferences, really. Actually not at all.
No, what about as a collector?
As a collector, I would say it's tough. Like Art Block is very putting out there some very good series, but on FXH it's easier to bet on artists and to support smaller artists. So I like to collect on FXH a lot because I know it supports it means a lot for small artists to be supported. So I like to give this energy on FXH. Yeah, go on, continue what you're doing because it's very good. So that's why I collect a lot on FXH as well.
What's the France NFT scene like for creators?
It's very interesting in France because we have a very strong community into creative coding. But when it comes about NFTs and generative art, there is a huge gap between those communities. And it's interesting to see because I think it's a natural way for the creative coding community to go into generative art, on-chain scripts and crypto. It's very interesting world, but there's this weird dynamic between those two communities. And in terms of gallery, it's the small galleries start to to make generative art a thing, but the biggest museum yet are still a bit pushing away, even though they collected some variable now or the pioneers of generative art. For the new wave, it's a bit slow still, but I think it's getting there.
Yeah, I mean, I think everywhere in the world, there's still a lot of skepticism or uncertainty about NFTs. So I can imagine a place like France, which is so deep rooted in tradition, and such a strong history of traditional art, that might be a little bit more of a resistance to it. But also, I'm sure.
And I mean, like the French is very hard to convince. So You have to prove a lot before they trust you.
Are there at least pockets of artists who are also French and French speaking who you can connect with, who are also, or maybe collectors? Is there a community budding there? Or do you find yourself mostly interacting with people overseas?
I have a lot of friends before the NFT time. Before that, I have all my friends from the advertising industry, because actually in the advertising industry, there's a lot of talented people, because people are actually asked to do creative things with code. So I met a bunch of people from that time, and they're still very good friends. But I didn't very find yet a very big community in terms of NFT in France. At least even in Paris, I didn't find one focused on generative art. I mean, for NFT, generally speaking, there's a lot of people talking about it, but focused on generative art, I didn't find any yet.
Building out collections versus building out one-of-ones. Have you built out one-of-ones? What do you think is the right balance for you or for other people?
I think both are good and necessary, actually, because long form generative art takes a lot of mental energy and even physical energy. And it's way harder to tell what you want with a long form series, because there is this surprise element that you can't control, opposed to when you make something specific, like a specific output for something, then you can focus on this thing and focus on your message with this specific output, or maybe those 3 outputs. So I think both are good for an artist. I think, I would definitely recommend to do both.
Got it.
Only one, you miss the other one. So,
and what can collectors and fans of yours expect to come from you in the future? Like, what are we waiting for? What's next?
Be a mix of both, continuing what I started to develop this year in terms of Anticyclone style or stuff like that, but also looking for new ways for me to make art. And when you start this way, it takes time to define where you want to go. So I would expect less stuff from me next year. And yeah, I don't know yet. Like paint, I'd like to explore paint more. I don't know how. AI, maybe. I don't know. And getting back into sketching daily. I'm trying to do this and just continuing on colors. Like just this morning, for example, I made this one. So this is like a generative thing I made.
Very cool.
So that's the sketch of today. So yeah, just have fun, continuing to explore stuff, to maybe stumble on something new. You never know. That's the good thing. That's the good thing about generative art. You never know.
How do you build in time? Yeah, I know one thing that I thought was really interesting you said was that at working in industry, you just learn to devote tons of time to your work and not get as distracted. Do you also try to devote time to getting to know your collectors, to building relationships with them? Is that something that you prioritize, or is that just something that kind of sits on the side a little bit?
It's definitely always good for me when I connect with people. I mean, it's the best we know with Web3 is this ability to be connected through internet, to socials. And I think that's something we didn't have before, and that we have to carefully take care of. We don't wanna, I don't wanna fall into that, that thing where you can't talk to people anymore. So if anyone hears this, it's sometimes it takes a week or maybe a month to get back at you, because I have a lot of messages and DMs to answer. But I will, at some point, I will answer. And it's not because I don't want to answer, just I can't physically. But when I do, it's always a joy for me to do so. And I always enjoy meeting people through, like IRL, in real life, or with a call, video call, Zoom or whatever. Maybe Discord is a bit too much for me. Like Discord, I'm like, no. Mail and DM are okay, but Discord is it's like my nemesis. Like Discord is my nemesis. It's way too intense for me.
It's a very difficult platform, and there's a lot going on, and we're not used to it. And I agree. I have to spend some time on there, but it's not my natural habitat for sure.
But yeah, I just love meeting people. It just nice to meet people. Like it just gives you just end up way richer when you meet different people from different horizons, because you can't know everything in the world. And every time I meet someone, they just bring me their story, their knowledge, and we can exchange stories and knowledge, and we just are here human at the end.
For sure. Cool. Well, thank you very much for taking time out of your afternoon, my morning, to connect. Congratulations on all your success. And, I really enjoyed, I think the collector-based NFT world, we're so familiar with some of this artwork, but to get your perspective on what you were thinking behind it, what the different traits were, what about your past kind of took you to where you are today. It's really, really awesome to get to hear all those perspectives from you. So I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Yeah, it was good to answer those questions. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, that is it for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you would like to help us out, head on over to proof.xyz and click on the reviews button at the very top and leave us a 5-star review. Thanks so much. Take care.